Your terminal just got an AI Copilot living inside it, and you probably don't even know yet. GitHub shipped Copilot CLI, a tool that brings the power of artificial intelligence directly into the command line where developers spend most of their day. But here's what makes this genuinely surprising. Most developers have no idea this is even possible, let alone that it's already here and ready to use right now. For years, GitHub Copilot lived in your code editor. When you're typing in VS Code or JetBrains, Copilot pops up with suggestions, finishing your functions, predicting your next line, basically writing code for you. It's incredible, but there's a massive gap, the terminal. That's where developers run commands, debug applications, deploy systems, and solve critical problems. It's where you spend hours figuring out why a deployment failed or what command you need. Until now, Copilot couldn't help there. Copilot CLI changes everything. Type a natural language question into your terminal. How do I find all Python files modified in the last week? And Copilot understands it and gives you the exact command. No more Stack Overflow searches. No more guessing syntax for commands you use once a year. Just plain English questions answered with the commands you need. Think of it like having a senior developer sitting next to you. Someone who knows every shell command, every flag, every trick, except they respond instantly and work 24/7. The terminal has always been powerful but brutal. One wrong character breaks everything. Copilot turns it from a minefield into a collaborative space. That's just the beginning. To understand why this is revolutionary, you need to know what GitHub Copilot actually is. It's built on top of machine learning models trained on billions of lines of code from across the internet. When you're in your editor and you start typing a function, Copilot analyzes what you've written so far and predicts what comes next, often completing multiple lines perfectly. Code follows patterns. Most developers don't invent new ways to sort an array every time they need one. They write similar logic repeatedly. Copilot learned those patterns, so it completes your thoughts at superhuman speed. Here's the critical insight. Your editor shows you maybe 5% of your actual workday. The other 95% is in the terminal. You're deploying applications, managing databases, running tests, debugging production issues, searching logs, managing version control. You're typing commands that follow just as many patterns as code does, but Copilot never worked there. A developer might spend 2 hours struggling to remember the exact command to list all Docker containers, or the perfect grep pattern to find a specific log entry, or the syntax to rename a Git branch. They jump between terminals, search Google, skim Stack Overflow. They are losing hours every week on friction that's purely about remembering syntax and command flags. GitHub saw that gap. Every developer constantly stops to think about commands. The friction is enormous. And unlike code editors where Copilot is optional, the terminal is where every developer works. This isn't a nice-to-have feature. It's infrastructure, the foundation of modern development. Here's the thing that changes everything. Copilot CLI works differently than the editor version. In your editor, Copilot watches you type and guesses what you want to write next. In the terminal, you ask it directly. The most common interface is a command called Copilot suggest. You type Copilot suggest, then describe what you want to do in plain English. For example, show me all files changed in the last commit. Copilot processes your request and returns shell commands that do exactly that. It explains what each command does, and you approve before running it. There's also Copilot explain. Paste a command you don't understand, some ancient one-liner you found online, and Copilot breaks down exactly what it does, flag by flag, in human language. The technical architecture is fascinating. It's powered by Claude 3.5 Sonnet, one of the most capable AI models available. When you ask a question, GitHub sends it securely to Anthropic's servers, where the model generates the command, and it comes back in milliseconds. Privacy is handled carefully. Your question and the return command are not retained by GitHub or Anthropic. They're processed immediately and discarded. This was crucial. Developers wouldn't trust it if their terminal commands were being logged. The tool runs locally as a CLI application, just a few megabytes of code. It integrates with the GitHub CLI, which most developers already use for managing repositories, creating pull requests, and automating workflows. So if you're already using GitHub CLI, Copilot CLI is just an extension away. The beauty is in the simplicity. Let me show you real examples of what Copilot CLI actually does in practice, because the best way to understand this is to see it working. Example 1. You need to find all Python files that were modified more than 30 days ago. Most developers would either Google this or manually craft a find command, getting the syntax wrong twice. With Copilot CLI, you type find Python files older than 30 days, and it gives you find name asterisk /mtime plus 30, 1 second. Done. Example 2. You're debugging a production issue and need to search 50 gigabytes of logs for a specific error pattern, but only from the last 2 hours, and you want the results formatted as CSV. That's a complex command. Without Copilot, you're on Stack Overflow for 20 minutes. With it, you describe what you need, and Copilot builds the exact pipeline. Example 3. You're managing Docker containers and need to remove all stopped containers and dangling images to clean up your system. If you're like most developers, you have a notes file somewhere with that command copy-pasted, because you can remember it. Now you ask Copilot, it tells you Docker container prune and Docker image prune, explains what each does, and you're done. Example 4. You're working across multiple Git repositories and need to stash changes in 3 specific files without stashing everything else. Git's stash syntax is notoriously unintuitive. You describe what you need, Copilot gives you git stash push path / to / file 1 path / to / file 2 path / to / file 3. Instant. The pattern is crystal clear. Developers spend enormous energy remembering syntax instead of solving problems. Copilot CLI collapses that friction completely. Now you might be thinking, aren't there already AI CLI tools? And yes, there are, but Copilot CLI is different in crucial ways. There's ChatGPT's web interface, which developers do use for command help, but it requires context switching. You have to open a browser, paste your question, read an explanation, manually copy the command back to your terminal. It's multiple steps and multiple windows. Copilot CLI is built into your workflow. No switching. There are other AI command line tools like Warp AI or various smaller projects, but none of them have GitHub's scale of training data. Copilot is built on models trained on literally billions of lines of code. It's not just trained on generic programming, it's saturated in the actual patterns developers use every single day. There's also the distribution advantage. GitHub's CLI is already installed on millions of developers' machines. If you use GitHub, and statistically you do, the tool is 1 command away. It's not yet another thing to download and configure. Most importantly, trust. GitHub is building this as part of your core development platform, not a third-party experiment. If you're already paying for GitHub Copilot in your editor, this is a natural extension. The same security model, the same privacy guarantees, the same company backing it. And it's integrated with the exact language model that dominates the industry. Copilot CLI isn't some chatbot bolted onto a terminal. It's Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet, the same model used by Fortune 500 engineers, now directly accessible in your workflow. But here's the kicker. This sets a standard for what developers expect from their tools. Implications of this are genuinely staggering. We're talking about fundamentally redefining what productivity means for developers. Right now, a typical developer's day is fragmented. You write code, Copilot helps. You debug, you're on your own. You deploy, you're memorizing commands. You manage infrastructure, you're copy-pasting from old notes. Copilot CLI patches that fragmentation. For the first time, your AI assistant is present across your entire workflow. The productivity gains are measurable. Research from GitHub shows that developers using Copilot complete tasks 50 to 55% faster than those who don't. Now extend that to the terminal, where developers actually spend most of their time. We're potentially looking at 30 to 50% time savings on routine tasks. Scale that across 10 million developers worldwide, and you're talking about millions of person-hours saved per month. But there's a deeper implication. As AI gets better at handling routine command-line tasks, what does that mean for how developers think about their work? Right now, part of a developer's skill is knowing the commands. That knowledge becomes less valuable. The real skill, understanding systems, designing solutions, debugging complex problems, becomes everything. In other words, Copilot CLI is filtering out busy work and forcing the industry to focus on actual thinking. There's also a consolidation risk. This tool strengthens GitHub's position as the absolute center of the development ecosystem. If you're already using GitHub for code hosting, GitHub Desktop for local development, GitHub CLI for automation, and now GitHub Copilot for both code and commands, the switching cost for developers goes up enormously. And here's what the headlines aren't telling you. Developers who don't adopt this will start to look slow to their teams within months, not years. Within 18 months, this becomes table stakes. Getting started with Copilot CLI is straightforward. First, you need GitHub CLI installed. If you're using GitHub, you probably have it already. If not, install it from github.com/CLI. Next, authenticate to GitHub. Run ghauth login and it walks you through the OAuth flow. Takes 30 seconds. Then install the Copilot CLI extension. Run gh extension, install github/gh Copilot. That's it, you now have access. To use it, the basic command is gh Copilot suggest followed by your plain English request. For example, gh Copilot suggest list all files changed in the last week. Copilot returns shell commands that do exactly that. It shows you the command, explains what it does, and asks if you want to run it. Review it, approve it, and it executes. If you encounter a command you don't understand, use gh Copilot explain to break it down. For example, gh Copilot explain find, type fname asterisk, log mtime -1, and it tells you exactly what that command does piece by piece. One powerful feature, you can pipe your explanation right into a shell command. So if Copilot suggests something, you can immediately explain it, tweak the suggestion, and run it, all without leaving your terminal. There's also an interactive mode. Just type gh Copilot, and it opens a conversation interface where you can ask follow-up questions and refine commands iteratively. The learning curve is nearly zero. If you can type questions in English, you can use this immediately. But wait, there's something nobody's talking about. This fundamentally changes how you think about problem solving. So here's what we've covered. GitHub shipped an AI Copilot directly into your terminal. It understands natural language questions and returns exact shell commands. It's powered by Claude 3.5 Sonnet, built into GitHub CLI, and ready to use today. The immediate impact is practical. Developers get faster at routine tasks. Stack Overflow searches drop. Copy-pasting commands from notes files becomes obsolete. Friction evaporates. But the bigger picture is this. We are watching the boundaries between AI and development completely dissolve. A year ago, having an AI assistant in your code editor was cutting edge. Now it's in your terminal. Next, it'll be in your debugger, your infrastructure tools, your monitoring dashboards. The question isn't whether AI will transform development. It's already happening right now at this very moment. The question is how fast developers adapt. For you personally, if you use GitHub, try Copilot CLI this week. Download it, authenticate, and use it for one real task. You'll immediately understand why this matters. The time you save on that single command will pay for itself instantly. For the industry, this is the moment junior developers need to start thinking differently. Knowing every command by heart is no longer valuable. Understanding systems, debugging complex problems, designing solutions, that's where real skill shows. The terminal is becoming collaborative. The old way of working is becoming obsolete. GitHub isn't the only company making these moves. Every platform is racing to embed AI deeper into developer workflows. What this tells you is that the next generation of developer tools won't be tools in the traditional sense. They'll be AI assistants that make your entire workflow smarter. This is what the future looks like. And it's already here.